Hey everyone, this is Chris Miller and you're listening to the EduMind podcast. If you're an architect, project manager, or a nurse, or maybe you're just curious about these career paths, then our podcast is one that you're not going to want to miss. Each week, we'll be talking to subject matter experts, course instructors, and other special guests to bring you the latest and greatest in architecture, project management, and nursing, and a whole lot more. Now, let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the EduMind's weekly podcast. Again, my name is Chris Miller, and I got a special guest with me today, Mr. Scott Bush. He's a leadership and manager training specialist coming to us live from Southern California. Scott, welcome aboard.
Thanks, Chris. Happy to be here, and I appreciate you allowing me to be a part of this successful podcast that EduMind's been bringing to their clients as well as prospects throughout. So thanks again for having me.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for coming. We got the holidays coming up, a lot to chat about. I know we have an exciting topic, but I think it's a very important topic, which we can have a lot of fun with, which is leadership and management. But before we get going on, I always usually try to find something funny to start with, whether I talk to my guests about food or sports, but I got that glaring football staring at me in the background. I'm in Ohio.
This one here?
I'm in Ohio. We're home of the Browns, which every year is a rebuilding year. So it hurts a little bit to see someone with a perennial winner back there. So, Scott, why don't you tell us a little bit what you do on what you expect? I know I mentioned management and leadership, but why don't you dive a little bit into that before we get into the meat and potatoes of the day?
Obviously the topic is very universal, and no matter what level of an organization you're a part of, no matter what the industry you're a part of, leadership, management, they're all just crucial to the skill set of any individual. I started my company, Bredesen and Associates, back in 2005, and really, it was a love of mine for quite some time, just to, in essence, teach. I always wanted to be a teacher, and so this was just an extension of just being able to develop and teach others in a way that on more of a professional level, obviously, than it is in the classroom. But quite frankly, that's what we're doing now. We are in classrooms. We are in those professional settings. We're doing online learning. So There's a number of different things that we do. And leadership management, this is another, excellent topic for folks like ourselves, really, that, it's just never enough to consistently improve upon those skill sets, no matter, like I said, what industry and what job function and responsibilities you currently have.
Yeah, you're absolutely true. Especially, we've had I'm going to say rough 18 months or so across the entire globe with the COVID pandemic. And so leadership is very important, especially during these trying times, not just in the business world, but in everyday life. And a lot of times people think, you got to be like a manager to be a leader or a head of an organization, but, your teammates are leaders too. So a lot of people sometimes misunderstand what leadership is. So can you kind of maybe give us an overview or an explanation of what is leadership?
There's obviously a number of definitions out there, and the last thing I want to do is give you a War and Peace type of explanation, but kind of, narrow it down to just a couple of key areas. It really is, it's designed, to anticipate the future. Leaders today, need to see beyond today, and they need to understand and anticipate exactly what is to come. How do they do that? They do it obviously from learning from the past, recognizing what resources, staff members, their current resources they have today, and to understand exactly what is necessary for that upcoming future. So I think anticipating the future is really a key component of that. The other one is just able to really articulate and communicate the direction that the company, the staff, the project that's necessary for them to move forward, and let's just unify the efforts of others, and being able to recognize exactly what talents they have, what skills they have, and leverage that. And in a way that allows everyone to participate and be involved in that really roadmap, and that's just moving forward.
Great explanation. It's funny, like everyone wants to be a leader when they're not necessarily in those shoes yet. I remember, you probably even remember too, when you're a kid playing the game, Follow the Leader, right? You follow a leader, see where they take you, and sometimes they might take you off the edge of a cliff, right? So,
Right.
they say everyone could probably be a leader in one way or another, but what does it mean to be an effective leader?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is you need to understand, the people that are around you, whether it be above, peer to peer, direct reports. And part of that, you want to produce and allow that autonomy to take place, right? And encourage that level of skill and momentum that they have, because that in essence builds confidence. So to be an effective leader, I mean, just recognize whom it is that is on your team. If you're hiring them for a reason. If you've adopted them and they're a part of your team, they're there for a reason. So we want to be able to trust exactly what it is that they produce and can provide for your team. So that autonomy is so crucial to be an effective leader, and just allowing that trust to come through based upon exactly the type of foundation and base that you've created, in essence, or that they've created as well for your team. So again, a big piece is to be an effective leader is just, again, allow yourself to take yourself out of that role or that title, and allow your people to thrive based upon your own, belief that you have in them. Because when that happens, that trust will then obviously come through. So it's just too important to allow that autonomy and to empower them to make good decisions and to do the right thing moving forward, because you know that they will. And if they make mistakes, that's okay too. That's another effective leader type of skill, is to allow those mistakes to take place and then learn from those on both ends.
Well said. So there's so many different type of leaders, right? I mean, you could be a leader on a project, you could be a leader in a classroom, you could be a leader on the football field. So let's get back to your Dallas Cowboys for a minute. Dallas, the Cowboys got a new stadium not too long ago, right? A beautiful stadium out there where they had the biggest screen ever known to man. So let's say you were part of that project of building the stadium, and there was no leader on that project. How do you think that would have affected the stadium project?
How would it, if I wasn't or was?
So you're on the team building the stadium.
Yeah.
And let's say there was a leader, but it wasn't a good leader. Is that going to have a negative, positive impact on the project? And if so, how?
Yeah. I think, leaders that can have a negative impact on any type of project or any type of influence within a team, obviously what that produces, unfortunately, is a lack of trust, right? The trust isn't going to be there. The direction of the actual project itself, there's that lack of direction. There's that lack of guidance. There's that lack of belief. And quite frankly, the big picture behind it is the end game, the end result will be missed. And it will be, it'll be kind of designed in a way that's just, there's a sense of uncertainty as to where we are and where we're supposed to go. So, when you have that lack of leadership, let's call it, that's a part of those types of projects, trust, confidence, and direction, really lack thereof, will be a huge component when that takes place.
No, I agree. I mean, I think not just a leader, but a good leader is important for any project, just to kind of make sure it reaches the end goal. But when it comes to leaders, and this, you train leaders all the time, you teach it, you breathe it, you eat it. So there's many different leadership styles, right? Everyone may be a leader in a different way. Can you maybe touch upon some of the different leadership styles that are out there?
Yeah, I mean, again, to your point, Chris, there are a lot. There's a ton. I mean, you go ahead and Google it, and you're going to find your top 5, top 10, top 25. I mean, there's a ton. So to kind of, again, from my perspective, in terms of how I would kind of nail down maybe your your top 3 or just 3 in general, you're going to have your autocratic, which is the ones that's do what I say, my way or the highway. It's kind of like this is the way, this is the way I've done it throughout all these years. So I'm successful. So if you do what I do, you're going to be fine. I'm not saying there's a right or wrong here, but that typically can be one type of style that's being used out there. Not that popular, but I'm not saying it doesn't work. But you got to be careful as to that type of approach. And then you can kind of look at the flip sides a little bit. Then you've got your kind of leadership coach, right?
Mhm.
Which is one that kind of plays both roles a little bit. It's one that kind of really acts as a guide. Someone that's asking good, coaching questions, leadership questions to the individual or individuals or groups that allows them to make their own decisions, allows them to answer their own
Right.
questions in a lot of ways. You're literally, again, empowering them to kind of make those calls. And then the third, I would say, is more of your, completely on the flip side of your autocratic, and that is your, kind of that laissez-faire,
Mhm.
right? Where it's like, you just free reign. Like,
Mhm.
yes, I've got the title, but I'm literally going to let you all do what you need to do. And again, especially in project management, a lot comes down to, these are skilled individuals.
Right.
These are individuals that, like I said, you've hired, or they're just a part of the team. They've been very successful in the past. Why, kind of infiltrate, your ideas, your thoughts, your guidance in a way that's not going to allow them to kind of, again, just branch out
All right.
and spread their wings. So that laissez-faire, again, that allows that, in essence, to take place. So, those three areas typically I would say are, if there's going to be subsets of those three, but
Right.
those three I would say in general, the autocratic, the more coaching style,
Mhm.
and then that laissez-faire kind of free range style are your typical three.
No, that makes sense. So let me ask you a question, Scott. So, sometimes leaders that come into, let's say you have a leader that starts a new job or starts a new
Hmm.
project. So he comes in and let's say he used to be one of those type of leaders where, kind of just sits back, lets his people do the work and kind of just, is there if needed, just like, as you said, just kind of laid back.
Hmm.
So let's say he starts working with his new team and it's just not working. So have you seen through your training where leaders actually have had to change their type of leadership styles because of the team that they're working with?
Sure. No, there's no doubt about it. I think that's what every really great leaders do is they assess the situation, right? And they understand exactly, what resources are available to them, whether it be people in general or the tools that are supplied to that. So every great leader needs to adapt, needs to be more agile in their approach based upon, what's in front of them. And I think that's crucial. And it also says a lot to the team. If you're one that they know that their leader, their boss, their supervisor, whatever you want to call them, their project leader, gives them the opportunity to kind of make those adjustments, make those tweaks along the way, that they're open to that type of customization, let's call it, based upon their own style. That says a lot to the team. That that they can ask questions, they can make different moves, knowing that it's not going to be one specific set of blinders that's on that leader that says, listen, if we go outside those those lanes there, that's unacceptable. No, you want to be able to kind of have that approach that's going to be just like I said, more of a customized approach based upon what you were saying in terms of what type of individuals or tools are in front of them.
So I think adapting is important. It's key, right? It's not
Sure.
always your way or the highway. It's
Yeah.
realizing, as you mentioned, what kind of resources you're working with and how to
Hmm.
best utilize that. Because the end goal is everyone wants to get the project done efficiently, and
Yeah.
sometimes you need to change the way you do things. So, as a leader, you're charged with many things, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you're charged with managing the budget, managing the procurement of resources and things like that, but also you're in charge with how the overall team kind of meshes. So, can you
Hmm.
talk about some ways that maybe as a leader you can kind of improve the performance of your team if that is indeed needed?
Well, I think again, it comes down to recognizing the number one most important resource in any organization are its people. And so, in increasing performance, you have to understand exactly, where those skills lie, right?
Right.
We've all got different skill sets, at different levels in the organization, but also your team have different skills based upon their own. They may have similar titles, they
Hmm.
may have similar responsibilities, but they all have unique skills in that approach. So, recognizing that I think is a key component to be able to increase productivity and saying, okay, who are the players? What are their skills that's attached to it? And how can we as a unit, really leverage those abilities? And then it comes down to the basics. What do I have to do as a leader to help motivate, to help influence my
Hmm.
team to get them to go above and beyond? And what's my communication style, right? Am I just getting in the way? right? Or am I allowing my communication to be one that is empowering them to, like I said, make their own decisions, make their own calls, and allow themselves to not feel uncertain to bring some issues, to me and to the rest of their peers? Because we know projects, it's not an A to B kind of thing. I mean, there's issues and adjustments that need to be happening consistently along the way. So do we have the confidence as a unit, as a team, as a group there, to allow ourselves to kind of make those changes along the way?
Absolutely. As you mentioned, communication is key. And, on a project, sometimes, people talk about, oh, there's a lot of communication is going on, but is it effective communication? That's what's important, because with communication also comes a lot of noise, right? Distractors and things like that. So it's how do you, so one of the jobs of a leader or a project manager is managing the communication, making sure that it is effective. So, at the beginning of the podcast, we kind of touched about, hey, we're going to talk about leadership, we're going to talk about management. So as we kind of briefly talk about as well, or spoke earlier, is you don't have to be a manager to be a leader, right? Sometimes someone on the team might be, you're not let's talk basketball. You might not be in the starting five, but they might consider you to be the leader of the team.
Right.
But when it comes to management, people maybe have a misconception of what that term really is. So from your perspective or point of view, what is management?
Management is, there's a lot of similarities between management and leadership, I would say. But really, management is more of a tactical based, area of influence and skill set.
Mm-hmm.
So management, you're dealing with more of a kind of a short term, process. Where leadership, it's more of that, kind of long term, 30,000 foot level type of, I guess, environment. The management's more 5,000 foot.
Mm-hmm.
You're dealing with, the tactical day-to-day nature in a sense. I'm not saying you can't go beyond that. You can't, have that leadership role. You can't be more of a future visionary. I'm not saying that, but management really, you're dealing with people, obviously, managing the people, managing the resources that's attached to that, but also managing the process. So with management, it's different. You got people and a process that you're consistently managing on a regular basis. Because again, the ultimate project, the ultimate goal, the ultimate result, that is what we're trying to accomplish. We want a successful outcome. How do you do that? You got to look at people and you got to look at the process. And as managers, those two key components are crucial to any success that's out there.
You brought up something rather interesting. You talk about process, you talk about people. Mm-hmm. So, you're managing a project, right? You could have the absolute best people in the world working with you on this project, but if your processes are flawed, no matter how good the people are, you're still not going to be effectively managing or even, working on that project. So those kind of go hand in hand. Some people might say, hey, which is more important, the processes or the people? So if there was someone to come up to you and say, Scott, I'm having some problems. It could be a process related. It could be people related. How would you go about maybe trying to help that manager kind of get to the root cause of it? And that way he can identify whether the processes need to be evaluated and fixed, or maybe it's the people that can't follow the processes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, and it's a horrible answer here because it really depends, right? I mean, you think about it. I mean, obviously they both have to work. You got to have a balance between those two. But at the same time, we talked about sports earlier. If you got outstanding, you got an outstanding playbook, right? I mean, it's flawless. I mean, based upon the team that you're playing, their weaknesses, right, and things that we can expose. We've got a playbook that is absolutely solid. But if you don't have players, to execute and to implement that particular process or playbook, all is lost, right? It doesn't matter. So I would say, to answer your question specifically, it's really one of those things, that process, that roadmap, that guideline, whatever you want to call it, is absolutely crucial. You got to have a process that is not so much flawless, but it has to fit in based upon what the ultimate outcome needs to be. So I completely agree with you 100%, especially in project management. We all know, I mean, that process is absolutely crucial. And And every player kind of has their own role. So it's not like everyone's got to play the same role. Everyone's got to have the same skill. So that is where the process can be more of an influencing factor. But at the end of the day, again, if the process is solid, but the people just don't know how to implement it, they don't know how to execute it, or they're not very good at executing a period, where do you stand? Where are you at, right? And then you got a leader that, tries to do the whole thing on their own. And we all know how that goes, right?
Yeah.
So it's a different, really, dichotomy between those two areas, but they're obviously equally important. That's why I said the answer is not great, because it's kind of like, it depends, and you got to have both. But you really do, right? I mean, the process is absolutely important, as well as the people. So from a leadership perspective, not to make this answer, any longer, but it's you have to look at, you can't look at it both the same as the leader. You got to look and kind of piecemeal those and box them in to say, okay, what's working well with the process? What's not working well? What things can I foresee as possible, hiccups and things that could damage this process or our ability to kind of be successful? And then once I kind of look at that from a process perspective, do we have the right resources in place? Do we have the right, people to kind of make that happen? So I would start with the process and then understand whether or not we have the right resources and staff members and people to support that cause.
No, you're absolutely correct. And I'm going to kind of maybe expand on that a little bit. We'll stick with our sports here. So sometimes you wonder, as you said, if it's a process or if it's a people, right? So you could have flawless processes, but if you don't have the right people, then the process isn't going to matter. Vice versa, you could have the right people, but the wrong process. So if you look at the Chicago Bulls, right, under the Phil Jackson, people often say, well, was it Phil Jackson's leadership, his triangle offense, or was he just blessed to have Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen? And we all thought, okay, well, we're going to figure that out when he comes to LA, right? He comes to the Lakers, but what happens? He gets Kobe and Shaq. So, I don't know what the answer is. Like if you have a great leader who has this firm belief in the process, does it really matter, who is there to do the work? Like, could he have thrown in just, a seventh, eighth person on the bench into the triangle offense and still bring home the title? So I don't know, but I mean, you're right. I guess it makes sense to evaluate the process and it's like plug and play, right? If you have a process that you believe in, like the triangle offense, you throw people in there. If it doesn't work, then I guess you can slowly eliminate. Again, not the best answer either. So,
no, Chris, you're exactly right, though. I mean, and that's an excellent, by the way, example as to what Phil Jackson meant relative to those two specific areas that we're speaking of now. Because Tex Winter was the one, obviously, that designed the whole triangle, right? And so, but both teams, I mean, obviously, he had a tremendous talent. I mean, come on. Now, that said, there's been tremendous talent throughout the entire NBA, throughout every sport out there, why is it, though, that you can't get an organization to win championships, even though it's like, they've got the best of the best, right? And we can have example after example, especially nowadays. I mean, we're seeing now these kind of super teams being, kind of collaborated, right? But, with Phil Jackson specifically, he had a process that at least he felt, as well as Tex Winter and the coaching staff, was solid. No question about it, whether it be in Chicago or in LA. West Coast offense, East Coast, doesn't matter. But you needed the team, the players, to actually buy into, that philosophy. And if not, I'm guessing you're going to have a lot of one-on-one guys, right? And kind of playing their own game. So I think that, to your point, that leadership role to kind of have them come together as a unit and buy into and accept that particular philosophy, whether it be, triangle offense or just culture in general, is crucial to that success. So, again, I guess we'll never know, but, hey, the championships don't lie, right? So what are you going to do?
Absolutely. I think he has 11 of them. You brought up an interesting word, culture. So how important is culture to, I know it kind of gets off the topic of maybe leadership and management, but I think we can kind of tie it in somehow. How important is culture to an organization, just not as an organization as a whole, but to the people that are within that organization?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, I don't know how else to, I would say it's probably the number one priority of any organization is to have a strong, successful, mutually agreed upon culture, because, what is it? I mean, it's a set of values. It's a set of beliefs. It's a set of, again, this roadmap as to, where were we, where are we today, and where the heck are we going? And
Right.
so, and that culture is so important to every individual within any organization or any project for that matter, right? Any team. And so, without a doubt, culture is absolutely crucial to anyone. And because I mean, you and I can both look at any organization, any team. If there's a disconnect
Right.
regarding that culture, the philosophy just isn't intact. There's no agreement, right? They're just kind of all over the place. It's just, I mean, obviously there's this kind of internal chaos, I guess, if you want to call it, quote unquote. We can predict how this is going to go. We can predict how this team is going to end up. No question about it. Culture is a baseline. Culture is a foundation that has to be established. Because if it's not, I mean, it's like, what are we doing here?
Right.
Why are we fighting the fight? I don't even know, what we're supposed to do. Culture, it needs to start there.
I agree. And so when it comes to culture, you said, it's a buy-in, right? You got to buy into the culture in order to succeed in that particular organization. So how important is it for somebody to, let's say you hire someone new on your team, and you're like, okay, well, we're going to have you start today, and the guy's there for 4, 5, 6 weeks. Then all of a sudden you're like, hey, let's talk culture today. How important is it maybe to have started with this is the company culture, this is how we do things, as opposed to the guy's been here 4 or 5 weeks, let's talk culture now.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's one of those things that I believe it's always evolving. So, whether you get new players coming in, right, rookies, veterans, whatever it may be, everyone needs to be a part of how that is built, right? And I was always a big fan when I was running teams back in the day that, everyone had a chance to kind of almost define how they felt like the culture was within the team or the organization on their own. So every team, every office had their own kind of culture definition, which means that everyone was buying into it because everyone had a part. And so that ownership that's been transferred in terms of how they believed and what they saw as to what culture truly represented for the team or for themselves was too important. So, does it need to be introduced right away? Absolutely. Why? Because it's like, all right, as we talked about in the interview, whatever you want to call it, this is kind of how we see the team. This is what we believe. This is the values in terms of how we treat others, how we treat ourselves, and how we treat our customers. And so that's how we see it. That said, it's an ever evolving type of, definition. Correct. So as you become, more and more of a consistent player here within the organization, you will start infiltrating your own set of values, your own set of, beliefs, and the way the culture then will, in essence now expand upon our own definition based upon you bringing that to the table.
It makes sense. And you mentioned another interesting or key word that I kind of take out of that is change. Your culture, right, it might not change in the sense that you have to abandon all your values that you hold true, right? But it does have to change as maybe not times just change, but also technology. So let's take the whole COVID pandemic, right? A lot of changes come out of it, but let's focus just maybe from the working industry. So let's talk about this whole working from remote versus working in office. It used to be that you had to be in the office, right? Had to see you every day, 8 to 5, da da da. But when the pandemic struck, all of a sudden offices closed. You had to work from remote. So now you see people don't want to come back into the office. They want to stay remote. So, I'm not saying the culture has to change, but as you mentioned, things have to change as things evolve. Just as we kind of touched upon earlier, leadership styles change over time. It also changes on, depending on who's on your team or what organization you're in. Yeah, it's been crazy. If you think about it, online learning was not even a thing until last year or the last 8 months. And it's just been interesting to see how that is. And it, you kind of see what kind of leadership or management styles a lot of these organizations have based on how they've reacted to, what they had to deal with during the COVID pandemic. So I know you do a lot of training. I'm assuming most of it was probably face-to-face prior to the pandemic hit. So can you kind of talk about how you've adapted and have you changed, not your culture, but have you found that you've changed how you do things maybe on a daily basis, operational wise?
Yeah, I mean, operationally, it was a huge shift for us. I mean, like you said, I mean, our trainings were, were face to face, and obviously a lot of people preferred that just because of the impact it really makes, on the class or the training itself. And that was the preferable method. I mean, rightfully so. But obviously, with the pandemic, all of our clients and I was even on calls with them saying, "I hear you, and I don't blame you." It was a big timeout. It's like, we got to figure out what the heck's going on here. So obviously, it was a huge shift for our organization, and so basically, almost immediately, it was, we don't know when this is going to end. Right. So we've got to still provide the services that we know is needed and that's wanted from our clients as well as any potential client. And so what do we do to ensure that we're satisfying that particular needs assessment? And so we went online, and so we took every single one of our courses, ones that you were like, how do you do that even online? We had to figure it out. Right. So we really converted the whole thing over to an online system, until this thing, eventually, got back to, well, as you said earlier, whatever normal may be. But I mean, that's what we, intended to accomplish. And so now we are, every course that is, requested, we can now do online. And it's been a tremendous success, but it wasn't because of what we did. I mean, obviously we're, one of, many that do, this now. But it was really our clients. We were learning from our clients as well in terms of, what aspects of that online learning will be necessary, will be important. So again, it's making that adjustment, making that change, making that shift to adapt to, what the needs are, but really what's ultimately best for your client. And that's where we are. So now we have the ability to obviously offer online learning, but at the same time, if they want to get face-to-face, that's always an option as well. And it sounds like here in 2022, that's becoming more and more possible, which is kind of a fun thing.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure you probably missed the travel. But I mean, that's just an example of great leadership, right? You were able to kind of assess the situation, and you could have just shut the doors. Hey, everybody, let's call it a day and go home. Yeah. But you took the time to figure out how you can take what you have, improve it, and make it, I guess, not relevant, but usable for what might be a remote world. So definitely hats off for that. We had some pretty good topics, hot topics today, leadership management. I could talk all day. But I always like to have a little bit of fun with my guests. So, I know you're Southern California. You travel a lot. So I'm assuming you've been to the East Coast a few times.
Sure.
So I'm going to ask you a question, and you may or may not, I'm not going to say know the answer, but maybe you haven't been to this place and can't make the comparison. So last episode, I had an architect on the podcast with me, and she's from Southern California. And now she's on the East Coast. And I asked her, I said, In-N-Out or Shake Shack?
Wow, I tell you what, that's a tough one because it's funny. We have now Shake Shack out here,
what?
And it's and that's something. So we've got the Shake Shacks. Oh yeah, it's in fact we got a chance to go to the theater here. Not Broadway related, but I mean the best we could do out here in Hollywood. And they've got, and it's kind of a cool thing is the Shake Shack is right next door kind of thing. So it's a great little transition, whether before and after the show. And I tell you what, the In-N-Out obviously has been a huge favorite. That's kind of, our little mainstay here. Anybody that does travel, as you well know, from the East Coast to the West Coast, it's like, gotta have In-N-Out, or at least try it out. But Shake Shack is that's a tough one to beat. The fries, the crisp cut. I mean, it's so darn good. That's a tough call. I'm so used to In-N-Out and I love it. I mean, without a doubt, one of the best, burgers around. I always get it animal style, but the Shake Shack, because it's almost like that new taste. It's like, ooh, that's tough. So I got to tell you, I'm not sure I can even present a winner in this one. I think it's basically a tie between these two.
I'm not happy, Scott, and I'll tell you why. I'm from Southern California, right? And,
so I was set up. So you're setting me up as well.
Yeah, I'm setting you up, and I was hoping you would go the way that she went, which was In-N-Out. So, out here in Ohio, we don't have In-N-Out. And we just started getting the Shake Shacks maybe a couple of years back. And I've been talking to everybody here at work about In-N-Out is the greatest burger known to mankind. And then the Shake Shacks came across. And people are like, oh, these are great burgers. So some of them haven't had In-N-Out. And I said, you know what? Anytime you ask somebody that has had an In-N-Out burger in a Shake Shack, they're going In-N-Out. And here you are, Oh, I can't pick a winner. So I'm gonna have to delete this episode so they can't see it.
I think it's as much travel as we do, right? It's one of
Yeah.
those things that, I call California home, but it's like because you travel so much, all over the world, you're like, you feel like you got second and third homes all over the place because, you're living in hotel rooms. But
Right.
so, I mean, you get a taste of those different meals all over the place. And so, but I hear you, and I don't blame you for having a little frustration on that side of the house. That makes sense.
I appreciate it, Scott.
Now
So
you're gonna want to. Now I want In and Out now. So now you're gonna go get In
well, at
and Out.
least you
Thanks.
have that option. You can drive down probably 3
That's
miles and
true.
get one. I got to travel
That's true.
2,400. But I'm going to show what it is to be a leader that will take his losses with a little bit of dignity. And I'll let the staff here know that, hey, I talked to Scott and he's had them both, and it's a dead tie. So, Scott, I know the holidays are coming up next week, a big day, Turkey Day. So,
Yeah.
any traditions or any fun things you got planned for the turkey event?
Well, I think it's just like with anybody, and families obviously really important, and friends. So whomever you're going to be with at that point in time, I think it's a chance to I know COVID is obviously always on the back of people's minds, but to get a chance to be able to spend some time with significant others and loved ones. That's something that we do each and every year. Just like many of us out there, and it's always been kind of a family event. I get the privilege of hosting it each and every year, and family's pretty big, so we get close to about 40 to 50 folks,
Wow.
In the household. So big turkeys, and yeah, it's a wonderful time of the year, obviously, and we always enjoy it. And again, like I said, if anything else, it's just an excuse to have family and friends, nearby, and to express what you're thankful for, and be with those that you cherish and love.
Sounds like you're in for a great time. I appreciate you coming out here, Scott, today. I know, we had, like I said, a couple of hot topics, leadership and management, and I think we just touched the tip of the iceberg, right? I mean, these are two huge, not just industries, but areas where we can talk for hours. So I'd love to have you back, Scott. Hopefully next time you have a better answer for me about the In and Out and Shake Shack. I'll let that slide.
I'll do my research, right?
And maybe
you gotta send me the canned answer so that I know exactly what needs to be said.
And then maybe I'll see that ball replaced with a Cleveland Browns ball, maybe.
There you go. Exactly. Sounds great, Chris. Well, again, thanks again for having me. I really appreciate the time. It's always a pleasure given the chance to catch up with you.
All right. For everyone else, I hope you have a happy holidays. We'll see you next week. And Scott, thanks for coming, and I'm sure we'll bring you back.
Thanks, Chris. All right. Take care.